is like the minimum reimbursement right now is like being rushed to like the particular these number of reimbursements that they give the instruction of like the entirety of like the underground site town maze like underground park like this the inspection of all that wine cellars and using the place of still numbers of like going to like permanently getting rid of like the of like the monster like the baby black monster that would be like growing within this according to my book especially on papers. So definitely able to bring that with like definitely I'm also able to bring definitely even though will was like a rush to like the hospital still and almost like runners think might be still continuing on with their using their uh I mean like Owen Stein would do like continuing on with their for this question of like the entirety of like the other down upside down using their friend rows and everything is definitely one of the because that entirety of like that underground wine that are spread like I'm using like all that will be like getting destroyed right now. So cinema is famous. So like I'm having like temporarily I'm just even though we did right now being much to like the hospital like I'm looking like that destruction of like the entirety of like the underground upside down like I'm causing a lot of relief to that's when what will be waking up and that when I'm going will would be like this whole episode of will like all that would be instantly coming ending up being like ending up stopping from that point on like the scenario that I'm going to get. So like I'm looking like that way like I'm looking like Will as well as George as well as Black Hawker and all of them like they think that they really so they have saved with might be along the line they will all be like so that like basically will have been saved would be that and finally have been freed from all these episodes to be along the lines like I'm saying like Will and George and Hopper and all of them will be taking but like I'm looking that needs the like the actuality of the situation would be like this baby monster which is still grown from the penguin. So like I'm looking like in order to like actually save and free will in order for will to be to have no more episodes like I'm looking like the actual true solution would be like basically example would be like giving a scenario that I'm scenario where like whenever would be like these are one of that once again saving will by like skillfully using like superpowers to like basically to destroy all the multiple there might be multiple baby nodes get collected on from within will. So like when like says that actually once again using the superpower and like detecting all those like monster and targeting like superpower without like injuring will like under the like 11 still being able to like send her telekinesis of like some superpowers into like basically being able to like destroy like target and destroy like the baby wants to from the engine. And I was like that's a scenario in the and I was like that way through 11 will be how that still would be like getting actually getting famous like in scenario that I'm looking for. So like until then I'm looking for scenario to be like even though until then right now with like will be rushed to like the hospital like I'm looking at definitely right now I'm doing like big in 3 months like will be recovering and like something like I'm looking and like on slab like I'm looking like will be temporarily getting that as for relief and the like episode won't be like happening for a while. It's like it's another way. But then I'm looking like eventually once again like that what's happening would be like once again slowly start to like again happen with like winter like the scenario that I'm looking at as to like how that would be happening. I'm definitely thinking about it so that like the actual if the kind of situation would be like that gate that open gate within like one lab like I'm looking like that open gate would be like present at like the ground floor. It's the living with so like and that gate would have slowly over time would have extended downward and more downward to towards like the underground is definitely not the perimeter. Above which like neither forward nor the king is begin other options definitely not the perimeter. So definitely above the point like that open gate like extending more and more deep into like fan numbers from like so even with like all the wines all those wines in like that underground made upside down made getting destroyed like I'm looking like even then like I'm looking like eventually and subset of like an underground they like getting born and like happening from beneath that already destroyed and existing upside down like the scenario that happened. So like another set of like underground upside down maze like this they eventually happening in the future and it and another like even deeper down into like that underground upside maze will be happening and I'm looking like that maze like I'm looking like eventually even spreading even beyond the 3 mile radius from like Owen's lab. It's like into like that it's like the scenario that I was thinking. And that way like that underground down at that point would be spreading all the way into like covering like the entire depth around of into Italy. It's like the scenario that I'm looking at. And my opinion. And so like definitely my different version for like that second underground down me which I'm eventually prepping to like for the red and pan up and cover up like the entirety of like the town house into that but through like the entirety of like the underground of like the town house into like I'm doing that second underground maze I'm to like the points there supposed to would have totally learned from like the initial setbacks of like through like the current setback of like the wine string like own stream using like the plane of things for all that wine. So like I'm doing it once like the second underground maze will be like creation by these wines like I'm doing like it would be a whole lot stronger but like the wines itself like learning from their initial mistake and basically the wines itself would be like building up that maze like underground path in like an extremely then more seriously even more stronger and dangerous way. It's like the scenario that I'm looking. So like I'm looking like that second underground maze like I'm looking won't be that easily destroyable like the first using just like a bunch of like on steam and their flamethrowers and it's definitely when the like destruction of like the entire destruction of like the second underground maze which would be eventually anticipated to happen, which would like span through and spread through like the entire passenger house or like the destruction of that would be such an extremely hard task for like Owens and Hopper and all of them, which like challenges in our that I'm looking at like I'm not very much. Okay, so like the thing I'm very much right now as for like the things people thinking that skills help to like take out the like I'm the definitely I'm the current two of people right now. Like right now as like Steve would be like opening that basement like like I'm different like two positive. Either like I'm leaning more toward the positive like absolutely dark not being present in that underground base like at like the switch for it's like the highly likely positive that I'm different. Also like I'm like that would have totally been disappointed and sad with like Dustin like totally attacking Dark to like basically trap Dark in that underground area. So like I'm looking like then back then I'm sitting to my friends when Dark was like approaching Dustin, like I'm looking like Dark might have had like absolutely no intention at all to like harm Dustin, especially when it was famous. So Dark might have been approaching Dustin even back then out of his like affection toward that Dustin might have been what might have happened to him. But Dustin attacking Dark might have been something that Dark might have never expected to happen. So like I'm looking that might have was that to like feel sad and disappointed in Dustin and like not that but then like that might have got afraid of it like Dustin then like that but then like might have grew up even more from like that underground basement of like Dustin home by now that I'm looking that might have reached like maybe like the stage of like the uh faceless actual like humanoid faceless monster definitely what might have happened to when and that might have advanced to like the and like that way that might have created like a process on the walls of like that underground basement and that might not only by now in depth to like the parallel world of like the highly likely possible that I'm doing. So right now the highly likely possible scenario that I'm looking right now is for like right now as like Steve would be opening like the basement or like I'm looking like uh Dustin and Steve that seeing absolutely nothing that underground basement that totally being empty. So like I'm looking at Dustin totally telling that Dustin totally being shocked and that's why that Dustin really trying to like convince Steve that basically that he's not lying and he's not trying to mock or make fun of Steve or like make Steve time or anything like that. Everything Dustin said was like actually the truth and everything. But like I'm just going that he's still not all being convinced the shock. And I'm also Steve even getting kind of like angry with like something for wasting Steve's time and like yeah, like I'm looking at Steve like shortly like maybe warning Justin to like not come in front of like Steve over again and like I'm looking like Steve and like getting on this car and basically Steve just running away just like that. This is like the highly likely for the scenario that I was going. The least likely scenario that I'm looking for like as like Steve would be like opening like that door to like shipment of like custom phone like at that point. The least likely scenario that I'm looking for like the moment Steve was will be opening the door like I'm looking like Steve not hearing any sound or anything. So like it would be dark within like the basement. So like I'm looking like Steve like slowly entering like the basement and like Steve would be sitting on the light. So like at that point itself I can feel like Steve shockingly seeing like Dark not in like at that point shockingly seeing like the movie standing there behind Steve. Get like I'm looking like what Steve at that point would be saying would be like the actual humanoid faceless monster. Like the scenario that I'm looking for. Like that by then would have grown to like the to like transforming and turning into like size of like the humanoid faceless monster. So like the moment Steve would be turning on the light then like dark like probably getting affected by like the light and the straight away charging towards like Steve and like maybe attacking and thrashing against Steve and like that straight away like running out of like the basement. So like at that point, might be when like Dustin might be suddenly seeing that in like a humanoid form, and basically at that point, like I'm looking like that straight away, like stopping and maybe staring at Dustin, and Dustin at the thing would be probably maybe at that point would be frozen the sphere. So like that, the humanoid monster like that, like would be staring at Dustin, and like that at that point, so like straight away running away into like the nearby form, like the scenario that I'm in. That way, like dark kind of like eventually ending up in like the food forest and living in like the forest, just like the staying hidden and living in like the forest, just like feeling the scenario that I'm going to bring up. Well, actually, it's like the and that way, like I'm to bring like Dustin and Steve, like basically making it their ultimate task to like find and take out like find and eliminate this like this monster uh, before causes another set of like abduction like in like the past at least. So like I'm remembering maybe for like any usual something in like not the form from like that by Octavia by Dustin and Cage and I'm like eventually want uh like the next day was like slowly finding out about like the whole situation which like everybody else with like Mike and all of them Mike and Bill and all of them like and like at that point I was like Dustin like totally like confessing to like Mike and for like in hiding that and like the certain confidence and not just like opening the things in like the uh in like the fear that was and all that like basically and with that like I'm maybe like once again the team regrouping with like the team of like Mike and the team of like Mike Lucas Dustin and like definitely Maxine would be like or hearing this usually as like Mike and all of Dustin and also will be discussing about this in like so like under the definitely Maxine will be hearing about this and then like Maxine the writing would be totally extremely curious especially with like Lucas revealing the story about like the monster and everything so like Maxine and like Maxine totally would be extremely curious to like actually see the monster that I was like I think definitely even though like Lucas I'm also thinking like maybe Lucas as well as maybe not I'm also thinking most likely Lucas and Mike like if you're telling Maxine to like maybe he like not go along with them to like the for like the monster that is shooting and all that like I'm also thinking like and definitely I'm also thinking uh like it's like quarrel between like the friends by Mike will be talkingly finding out that like the film was lying and hiding stuff and like while Dustin as well as like Mike would be talkingly finding out that like Lucas had basically revealed like their core extremely important crucial information about like the monster and like the password and everything to that vaccine and basically all that. So like I was like even though Maxine would badly want to go with them like Mike as well as Luke was telling out of like concern for like Maxine basically like Mike and Luke was telling Maxine to to not come with them. So like still Dustin would be like would be like telling Maxine to like come with them and Maxine as well desperately wanting to like get on the to like find like the monster and basically so usually I'm just like them getting fed up and them looking that way. Maxine and I was like Dustin and Mike and Luke was like going out to like the forest like to basically search and find like the human space with most of that. There's like a scenario that I'm looking only for and I'm brain version. Okay, so like the human brain version right now as for like the forest in which like dark right now has ended up by digging from the first place and like I'm looking would be like not like raising of course forest especially my book brain version. And so technically when the brain person have formed like what Steve had found that like the replacement might be like the skin of like that might have shed. as it might have grew by then it's definitely not premature. Like by then that might have grew up from its that transformation state to reaching like the transformation form of like the humanoid form of like the big of the human premature. So like while during this transformation like it might be like the skin that might have shed that basically still might have found and of the might have found that like the replacement right now is definitely not the same person. So like when the represents that like it might have been only got like that might have transformed and reached like the form of like the humanoid faceless most of that staff might have even gained like the strength to even be able to like escape from like the placement of the fish. It's definitely what might have happened is definitely not very much like I was saying this might be the process and still even at that point on just reaching like the form of like the humanoid faceless monster even at that point like staff might have not been able to like use lacks the power to create portals and escape into like the parallel world from like the real world, which like the humanoids faced with monsters in like the beginning were able to do. Like I'm going to bring like the case of Star, like I'm going to bring that since like it might be since like that has only just now might have only transformed and reached like the stage of like the transformation of like the humanoid faced with monsters that still might need more time before like that would be able to like create portals and escape from like the real world. Gaining before like that, will be able to gain the power to like create portals and from like the real world and escape to like the parallel world and to and fro. It's definitely my preference, and this might be the process of reason for like that totally escaping by like digging that way out of like the basement of like the monster instead of like just escaping to like the parallel world from like the real world. It's definitely my personal impression right now. Okay, so like the name of the career person right now as for like Nancy without hesitation, like talking only about like learning. Like I'm going to only specifically because I'm definitely still thinking about the represent and like learning might have definitely be that played like that only a role in like basically that absolute bond of friendship between like then that might have like put stress between like Nancy and Jonathan way back in like the bus while Nancy and Jonathan were like so extremely young and it might have been back then that like Nancy and Jonathan might have played around and basically like checked their done their whole farm spring things and all that like basically it might have like when they might have done all that initially might have been during like the back like the past when they were way more young during their childhood and back then, Nancy and Jonathan might have been like the best of friends. And back then, like Nancy as well might have been might have been someone who might have been exactly like Jonathan. Like Nancy might have had like Nancy's personality as well might have been like so similar to like Jonathan back then. Where like Nancy as well might have been like someone who exactly like Jonathan might have been like someone who might have not been sort of afraid to like fit in and all that. It's definitely number three impression. So back then, like Nancy and Jordan might have had that absolute sync and chemistry and basically everything. Especially my preference, all that like that absolute bond of friendship between like Nancy and Jordan, all that like might have gotten destroyed, and Nancy and Jordan might have that way stopped seeing each other at all. Like all that might have happened only due to like Lonnie and Lonnie's like own behavior. Like Lonnie might have only made a scene while during like a family get together between like Nancy's family and Johnson's family, and that will make the for friendship as well between like Nancy and Johnson like the person simply remember the dimension that I feel like how that might have even been formed might have been actually through like the friendship between like Mike and Will at that moment of friendship. And I still remember the friendship where like Mike and Will like very first friends might have been each other like Mike and Will. It's definitely very friendship like their bond of friendship after like meeting each other at school at college school might have been what eventually might have brought like a family close up together as well. It's definitely might have been so that way, like I'm going to tell you that that way I'm going to tell would be how that might have been even how like Nancy and Johnson might have even seen each other for like the first times and like might have like their bond of friendship even happening way back in the past like that even happening might have been solely due to like the reason for that even happening might be that the initial cause of all that happening would be actually like the friendship between like Mike and them. Exactly also like a positive that I'm able to. So like definitely it might have been like learning like at some point like being so Australia road and creating some sort of like a scene that might have resulted in like that bond of friendship between like the two families of like might and will ending up like a distance being formed between them and that way like a distance between being formed between like Nancy and Jonathan. So it might have happened solely due to like lonely and lonely simply never felt. And absolutely remember that it might be eventually through that distance happening that I'm able to like Nancy might have had like a gap change and like Nancy might have really started to like rise to like the predicted with like the crowd and with like everybody else at school and everything like that way like Nancy alone might have had that change where like Bronson might have still even that might have remained same when it comes to like this gap might have been what might have happened. It's definitely going to share. So like the premises were like in the present like Nancy would be normally sees the regretting that like that what separation that might have and difference that might have been formed between like Nancy and Donald due to like knowing in that distant past like basically Nancy might have probably next the person like rejecting more than ever that all that had to happen and basically since all that happened basically might have happened solely due to like knowing like that would be the reason for like Nancy right now straight away without even hesitation like in front of Morabom and like Nancy even without hesitation, like talking about like knowledge, it's certainly matter the real question. Okay, so like the single frames right now as well, like with what I think like saw me and like I think sort of have mocked and made fun of like think about like the relationships between like Nancy and Johnson right now in the company of me a reality. Like I'm definitely I was bringing the very like morning, like I'm looking like while Nancy something would be like first to like wake up and I'm looking like Nancy will be waking up and seeing like Johnson right next to her, like I'm definitely at that point, the became Nancy Amberson straight away once again having that factory reset kind of like a situation where like he was once again going back to her uh, earlier self and would be like once again like would be like the moment Nancy would be waking up itself like and Nancy would be like filled with like a regret and Nancy would be like only filled with the absolute feeling of regret of like Nancy would be only feeling that like Nancy would be totally feeling as like he has like totally cheated on the Steve and basically like Nancy would be feeling so really bad because like on top of like the extreme regret existing within Nancy something to like Barbara stuff like on top of that like I'm looking right now Nancy will be getting like another huge regret which should be like definitely the extreme feeling of like Nancy having cheated on Steve. That's definitely my very emphasis. So like I'm looking that scene Nancy waking up to that extreme regret and everything like that totally will be like something Johnson won't be like expecting like the scenario where I'm able to so definitely that totally shocking Johnson as well. And I mean like Johnson as well maybe also like maybe would be like feeling bad at that point, see Nancy like drowning in like in the feeling of guilt and comfort at that point, like the scenario that I'm looking for. So like I'm looking like Nancy at the very next morning itself, like I'm looking like Nancy will be like rushing to like basically head back and I was thinking that way, like Nancy would be heading back to Hawkins, and I was at that point, like I was thinking Nancy would just straight away rushing towards like trying to like find Steve, and I was thinking, like Nancy straight away going up to Steve, and like Nancy would be like acting in a very like in like a very level manner towards like Steve, because like that the thing would be just like Nancy will be trying to like make up for her that extreme guilt that deep down Nancy will be feeling the film I was very much so like I'm looking Nancy so the acting in extremely lovable manner towards like Steve and Nancy telling Steve like Nancy telling story to like Steve for like the earlier quarrel between like Nancy and Steve but like still Nancy would be like so extremely afraid to like even reveal about like what happened between like Nancy and Jonathan's like the scenario that happened so like I'm looking at Nancy acting in that kind of extremely lovable but full manner towards like Steve but like I'm looking like Steve's innocent as like Steve would be like straight away accepting Nancy sorry and like Steve would be totally happy to have Nancy back and like seeing Steve's innocent like I'm looking like would be even innocent and love towards like Nancy without realizing the truth like I'm looking would be creating like even more of like an extreme guilt within Nancy that I'm looking like actually Nancy feeling suffocated the extreme guilt and regret that I'm looking like Nancy totally revealing confessing like the truth about what happened between like Nancy and Jonathan to Steve. It's like the scenario that I'm looking at that when we like such an extreme made the shock for like Steve. It's like the scenario that I'm looking at. Steve at that point would be like totally fuming at like Nancy and I'm looking at Steve shouting out to like Nancy that basically so what Tommy and like Matthew's brother said about you and Jonathan was that in fact actually true and all that. Maybe a lot of like Steve at that point would be like shouting and fuming at like Matthew. Like the scenario that I was looking at. And Steve at that point is like straight away Steve breaking up with like Nancy's like the scenario that I was like. And Steve would be like extremely angry towards like Jonathan as well, like my visitor was saying. Yeah, like I was looking like Steve totally moving on. And I was looking like due to like and I was looking like during that time definitely I was looking like Nancy and Jonathan by then would be like realizing about like their plan to like basically bring down like the energy laboratory and Owens and his team and all that like using the cassette using the voice recording and everything like their that strategy has probably failed with like since like Owen and his team has like only like eliminated all the underground upside down vines and everything and clear by then would have only cleared that upside down vines completely using like the flamethrower and everything. So like I'm doing that way like there won't be any evidence for like the claims of Roy Bowman and Nancy and Jonathan other than they are existing just like underground maze passage like there won't be any other evidence for something to something to like any suspicions involving like the Nazi laboratory and all that. So like I'm looking like so it's because of this reason like I'm looking like by then like I'm at that during that point like I'm looking like definitely Mobile Bowman as well would be like finding out about all this and would be extremely disappointed along with like Nancy and Jonathan as well. And I'm looking like that way like I'm looking like once again like Nancy and Jonathan having to like basically spend time together and like work with like Mobile Bowman to like once again find new strategies and even use new strategies to like collect more maybe like and I'm looking at that when maybe like I'm looking like Rebo and like maybe like coming up with the strategy and telling maybe Nancy and Jonathan to like get some sort of like a different strategy or like under the three of them like maybe like planning on using some sort of like a combined strategy to like basically somehow manage to like put that up to them by tricking Owens and his like team like basically to once again try to infiltrate as if to while disguising the infiltration, like to still infiltrate in a way as if to through such a manner as if they are getting forced by Owens and his team, and that way to actually take at that point to from within Owens energy laboratory to stealthily take actual photo evidence, like photo or video evidence with that actual stealth of the gate in Owens energy laboratory this would be looking at that point, like the strategy that I'm Murray Bowman would be coming out the next to bring down Owens and his team and then of the okay and everything is definitely going to everything. So during this time, so certainly I'm looking at Owens coming up, eventually coming up with this next strategy. So I'm looking since at that point, definitely Nancy as well as Johnson will be once again having to work together. So I'm looking, yeah, I'm looking after he would be breaking up with Nancy. I'm looking Nancy will be probably feeling shattered and shocked, and I'm looking for Nancy would be drowning in sadness and guilt with the scenario that I'm looking against. I'm looking that whole regret and that feeling of guilt, I'm looking Nancy totally eventually taking it out on poor Jonathan is scenario that I'm looking for. So I'm looking that way. I'm looking Nancy by even though they would be forced to work as a team because I'm looking because both Nancy and Jordan their high priority would be forced to basically the shutting down and bringing down of the and of the energy laboratory and the uh and basically to have get Owens and his team after and everything even though this would be their higher priority and those people solely due to the reason Nancy and Jordan would be feeling forced to work together while Nancy would be starting up all the quarrel towards Johnson and there only there will be also, I'm looking at that point for Nancy and Jordan always quarreling and fighting between each other. yeah, like I'm looking like they will be forced to like work as a teams, like to basically along with like my program so that like they can bring down like one and like the laboratory and definitely well. So and also at that point, I'm considering like Nancy to be not very angry at like Jonathan, but that will be also that will be how like Nancy at that point will be taking off some extreme cases. Just like the scenario that I'm doing. Nancy is not going to be extremely angry at like Jonathan, but like will be also extremely angry at Bowman as well. Settling up with him. Like Nancy will be totally seeing like Bowman as like the reason for like what happened between like Nancy and Jonathan and all that, and Nancy thinking of Steve and all that. So definitely my Siberian pressure. So like for management at that point to be like struggling to like calm Nancy down and to make Nancy understand like and all that. Especially my Siberian pressure. So like I was get like them like without any absolute teamwork at all, like without while always like the three of them would be fighting amongst each other. Yet like I'm doing like them still trying to really trying to work as a team and trying to like bring down like the Owen Sanchez like kind of the about like the that I'm like rolling for like and back of the but so like definitely I'm looking like up like Steve would be breaking up with like Nancy and looking like for great while I'm looking like Steve not totally ignoring Nancy and like not totally ignoring Nancy and like not even looking at Nancy at all like only maintaining that distance from Nancy and everything and that would be like extremely um extremely painful for Nancy like doing the scenario that I'm looking. So like I'm looking like yet like that way I'm looking like she always keeping that distance like I'm looking even though Nancy would always have that quarrel with like Jonathan during that time. Still I'm looking the more Nancy and Jonathan would be like spending time together like I'm looking like still eventually Nancy will getting or time like I'm looking Nancy getting more closer and closer towards like Jonathan and I'm looking like Nancy feeling bad, eventually feeling bad about like taking out her anger and regret on like Jonathan. It's like in just scenario that I'm considering today. So like I'm considering that way like I'm considering eventually in like the future I'm considering Steve as time passes, maybe a year passes, like I'm considering Steve eventually maturing up, like I'm considering Steve totally forgiving Nancy and I'm considering like Steve yeah, like Steve wouldn't want, and Steve totally like this is becoming accepting of like the fact that like what Nancy had towards what they had towards Steve was like just a lie, while what Nancy had towards John was like after so loud. Like basically Steve basically eventually maturing enough to like the concept of or like the purpose like 1 year and was like Steve eventually maturing up and realizing that and like Steve eventually becoming accepting of that and basically feel that way, ending up becoming that good friend of like Nancy, both Nancy as well as John, but eventually it's like changes with the scenario that I'm while during then like Nancy and Jonathan would be in love and would be in like a relationship with like during the scenarios that I'm realistic and make it real. And then also predict maybe by then like Steve would have maybe in another relationship himself. Definitely remember that. So like Steve having a new girlfriend and then it's like yeah like I'm living like them or like being in that absolute good terms of like good terms that like when that absolute friendship between each other and everything is definitely my preference. So like I'm looking maybe that way. Not only Steve, but like maybe that new girlfriend of Steve as well, eventually ending up being part of like the whole adventure of like the parallel world and like monster and everything. In like the distant future, also like an individual scenario of like about the design I'm looking to bring and not remember. Sort of bring up a Korean person and for like the scenario that I'm looking to bring up for like where exactly Nancy will be like eventually confessing like the truth that she has cheated on Steve with like John and like I'm something like that I'm would be most likely at like talking school. Definitely remember the like I think the feel that like talking school will be where like I'm the different most likely Nancy will be like 100% collective about this thing. Definitely remember the revision at that point I was Steve will be shouting and fuming and venting out at like Nancy and because of that like because of like attracting like the attention of like of like a great number of students who will be there even at that point of like the scenario that I'm listening and that way like I'm considering like the news about like Nancy cheating on Steve like I'm considering that way spreading all throughout like the school just like the scenario that I'm listening that way like I'm considering towards Steve like having to go through a lot more of like the mocking and like by like a great number of students, especially including like Tommy and like Maxine product like everybody would be like seriously mocking and making fun of Steve, and would be like totally taking advantage of that situation to like seriously badly hurt and mock and make fun of Steve while Steve will be at such like lower point of that sadness and everything. It's definitely my considering and production as well. Like the scenario that I'm doing, and definitely I'm preferring Nancy would be like little thing always like, and I'm preferring that that as well to be creating even more guilt within like Nancy is also like in this of the scenario that I'm doing, and I'm also putting a remote possible scenario where like I'm doing as like Mackie's brother and Tommy will be making fun of like Steve. Like maybe at that point like Nancy maybe at that point, like Nancy is totally shouting out and getting angry at like Madeleine's brother, and then there was like at that point, like Madeleine's brother like totally like trying to lecture Nancy's like a scenario that I'm doing. Yet like I'm looking at that point, I'm looking maybe was the like trying to like stop Max's brother, and maybe like I'm looking that way like a fight between like Max's brother and Steve as well happening where like Max's brother will be totally for and badly injured Steve. Also like any scenario that I would maybe Tommy as well would be like attacking Steve and I was like Max's brother for like in the scenario that I was saying. And I'm wondering like at that point like Nancy being like totally feeling so bad for like as well. And would be feel that absolute guilt and I'm like as Nancy would be like trying to like treat and help Steve like I'm doing Steve will be like shouting out to like Nancy to like go away and all that such an individual scenarios when I'm going to like maybe closely happening but like I'm doing definitely and I'm doing maybe like just like for incident I'm doing like would be like I'm doing maybe uh, seen by Dustin is also like about to that episode. Right? So right now it's like Dustin and Steve like totally working together to like find like that find that and all that like I'm definitely I'm like eventually like a same state totally being formed between like Dustin and Steve and like a genuine care from like Dustin's side towards like Steve and Dustin I'm seeing Steve as like a great forefront of like hustling, especially when good. So like the flavor to the next it's eventually like that future scenario where I'm just bringing like Maxine's product to get only badly injuring skill like I'm doing like Dustin maybe like witnessing that from like a distance and definitely I'm bringing definitely like Dustin totally finally taking out his like a revenge on like Maxine's products like the scenario that I'm doing and it wouldn't just be like Dustin definitely like definitely Lucas Dustin Lucas and Mike and maybe even Will, like all of them have like a team like basically totally like getting revenge on like Max's brother. Like it's like an eventual scenario that I'm looking. So like so maybe I'm looking for like by then like maybe of like a possibility of like by then like them 11 like them totally running into like 11 maybe by then and basically so like I'm looking or like the other possible scenarios like that way like I'm looking like maybe like the group of like Dustin, Lucas and Mike maybe they might not be from like it will be just Mike because of that Dustin like trying to get revenge on like Michael's brother and that attempt as well backfiring and maybe like Michael's brother even injuring Mike Lucas and Dustin just like some more likely of that happens right. So like Mike and Lucas and Dustin will be extremely frustrated at that point. With them not being able to do anything against Michael's brother. But like I'm once like eventually like like they will be finding 11 like once like eventually like 11 would be like eventually joining back to like the group of like Michael and stuff like at that point I'm definitely preparing like them only seeking 11's help to like finally get a revenge on like Michael's brother. Such an individual scenario is definitely seems possible scenario that I'm also referring where like I'm looking to 11 like I'm looking like Michael and Dustin getting their revenge on like Max's brother and like I'm looking like Max's that way like at that point Max's brother is like huge ego getting crushed by 11 and like being product being put into his place. It's like an individual scenario as well that I'm able to notice like I'm not very okay, so that the film frame survival one for that what that points and 15 with your item about so for and for the most likely the proof that basically the gate within like over 50 like energy level 3 would be extending downwards and outwards like deeper and deeper into like the underground. Just like the scenario that I was sitting on the framework. So like this would be what like right now on to be trying to like show Hopper. It's definitely the framework. So like maybe like on to be trying to like get all the help we can to definitely make a friend rather than have Hopper or like anyone against him, like they need to have like all of to get all of their help. Like maybe like also they think that even if it's like great thing like going to do also nearing that offer help as well. Especially and offer to like not try to like offer to be able to like understand own situation and instead of like acting against like Owens or like basically to create more trouble instead of creating more trouble for like to like maybe like Hopper can to even help Owens out might be maybe that the reason for like maybe Owens right now uh maybe like trying to like show Hopper to something which Ambassador would be definitely see like the gate expanding downward into like the underground is definitely my favorite. So like definitely especially so like right now as like Owens and his team is like taking Hopper through this lift like basically the fact that like the lift it's like basically just the fact that the lift looks like recently built up with like an underground recently dug up within like the Lapi laboratory. I'm going to be precisely because of this reason that like I'm going to like it might see only recently that like and his team might have figured out and found out that basically that gate in like the energy laboratory like slowly extending more and more downward in deep into like the underground stuff. So like I'm like uh, so like I'm thinking that would be what like I'm thinking right now. What would be like, and his team would be right now about the next show hopper. It's definitely my personal impression right now. And I'm still saying that my personal impression that like right now it would be like that gate like that jump according to my personal example, it would be like expanding like basically that situation would be something that like even Owens and his like team won't be able to like it wouldn't be something in their control or would be something it wouldn't be something that they would be able to like stop or like close the gate as well. It would be something that they would be able like to if the even address since it was like just been revealed that it's like 11 that has opened like the gate for within the energy laboratory from like the real world to like the parallel world under the like definitely it might require like 11 help and under the like it might not just require like either under the it might require like the help of like not only 11 but like Tally and like a bunch of like the other field experiments of using their superpower to collectively to even be able to like close like the opened up portal from like the real world to like the parallel world in like the lab like one possibility that happens. So like I'm just like while opening up like the portals would be like comparatively easier um, uh, when uh, when it comes to like the 11 powers and everything like when it comes to like closing up like the bottle it would be like a lot extremely hard to do in contrast it's definitely in contrast to opening of like the bottle it's definitely the possibility that I'm doing so this is only one possibility that I'm doing so other possibility that I'm considering is for like maybe Owen's situation right now would be like Owen's like basically even using the flamethrower, like I'm like Owens won't be able to like even while Owens and his team would be able to like use the flamethrower to like get rid of like the vines that would be spreading that are spreading into like the real world from the real world. Like yes, like I'm saying like while using the flamethrower onto the gates itself, like I'm saying like the vine at like the gates would be like a lot more tougher and stronger that even flamethrowers won't be able to like destroy like the vines at like the gate within like the energy laboratory. So like I'm looking like Owen would be like totally right now in like a confused situation where like he himself would be like totally as to like how to close like the gate before it expands downward into like deep into the underground too much to like the point where like put to the point where like the entire real world would be getting consumed by it and the parallel world will be like in an instant like simultaneously would be like consuming like the entire skills of the real world and turning like the entire skills of the real world into like the parallel world might be like an individual consequence of like a possible scenario that like like Owen and his team might be foreseeing and fearing right now. Also like about that emerging. And so definitely, my personal this is like the possibility that I'm seriously going to that basically maybe that is the only way to like cross like the gate within like the energy laboratory from like the real world to like the parallel world. That case like the only way to like cross that gate might be to basically to destroy like the source of like all this like spreading of like the mindset everything of like say down like zero we just like absolute true root of all this, like that absolute root source, which would be like a huge ginormous huge tree living, breathing, like vine processing, like huge tree, which would be like present deep within the underground in like the parallel somewhere. It's like a possibility that I'm observing. So like destroying that giant tree that would be buried deep within that underground. would be like that would be like the toughest level because like that tree itself would be alive and like looking having would be attacking anyone who tries to like specifically member tree creature. So like that tree would be even able to like communicate with like the shadow fighter like monster as well as like the base monster and everything is definitely member tree. So that tree being the root of everything and basically it will be only through like the destruction of like that core that absolute ginormous tree that would be present possibly under the thing will be present in like the underground in like the bad world. That would be like the only way to like basically to close like the uh, gate within like the energy laboratory, like an eventual figuring out kind of like a scenario in terms of different like hopper or like points and all of them would be like eventually figuring out in like the simply just like also like about that like all this like creatures and vines and monsters and vines and everything from like the parallel world are all simultaneously connected at the same time. Like so that the destruction of that core tree, ginormous tree, might be that kind of might result in like the simultaneous like destruction of that every other monster and vines and every other things connected to like the parallel world is definitely very scary. So connected to creatures and connected to the tree in like the parallel world and the things definitely when it comes to like that would be like the only way to like destroy like the gate within like the energy laboratory of like going to like the other possibility that I'm looking at the end of range that I'm sitting on it. Okay, so like the minimum frame listing right now as for like the complication of like Owen's speed in like using like the plane to on like a great number of names so far underneath like the lab there are the level framework using of like due to like company like the existence of like all sorts of like gases like so far deep underneath like the ground like so far into like the deep of areas like maybe like they might be there might be existing like all sorts of uh, different kind of like gases, which like I'm going to like if the flamethrowers are used there so far deep into like the underground and looking like deep gases might cause like the flames to like basically if the flame from like the flamethrower interacts with gas like I'm going to like there might be like an unimaginable levels of like a huge explosion is the flammable temperature. So this might be like that inhibiting fact which that would be like it will be preventing like one sense just like the from being able to like use the flame from so far underneath like the ground. It's definitely to destroy like the vines in like the maze so far underneath like the ground. It's definitely mitochondria. So like definitely and notice that like I'm also putting like the more they will be like digging deeper and deeper into like in towards like the core like I'm like literally like they would have like their limitation because like the temperature like the heat itself would be like Amber Spring might be like growing and getting to unimaginable levels like maybe so far underneath the ground that Amber Spring they won't be even able to like go even beneath certain extent uh, after like digging so far deep into like the underground remember the temperature. So there will be that limitation. So like I'm looking like once like the scale goes even further, even beyond that, like I'm looking like it will be like totally unstoppable. Like would be along the lines of different like Owens would be thinking. So like I'm putting like right now like Owens task that you'll be seeing right now would be to like basically to somehow figure out a way to like stop like spreading of text gate downwards before it reaches like that levels of depth in like the underground where like even no human would be able to like enter or go up to like stop like the underground waves and everything. It's definitely matters that this would be like that extremely huge and difficult like task that would be up ahead for like Owens and his team right now about which like I'm doing right now Hopper Owens would be aware of Hopper right now making Hopper realize right now. It's like doing the scenario that I'm doing also, the thing on prevention right now, but like the gate within like the energy laboratory extending so far extremely deep to like the underground. Like, I'm definitely right now still told him, I think it's still thinking about the prevention that like there will be that absolute source of like all these like creatures and vines and like monsters and everything existing deep within like the paddle board, deep within underground within like the paddle board, and that would definitely be a free, like a huge ginormous free, and like that would be able to like move and even attack if definitely with him. So definitely it would be like definitely just thinking about the potential right now is that like it would be that destruction of that free alone that would be making it eventually towards like the very end, you'll be making it forward for like towards the very end of the show that will be making it possible to like simultaneously destroy like all the face monster like the vines and like just huge game beneath like the energy laboratory and all that. It's definitely my very conception right. Okay, so like the human brains right now with like the change in like technology about like in so far being into like the around the they are like nothing at all to like change about when in like when started situation definitely my brains were like this like that monster like that this baby monsters which will be like growing more and more from within will but different like nothing even happening to them and it so different them to still have that firm control over will even right now especially my even after like the whole plane using of like the plane thrower in like the very top like underground near definitely my so definitely with like Bob right now wanting to like go to like take like George as well as Bill to like main like I'm definitely like even though like definitely I'm like George as well feeling that would be a good idea like still definitely that won't be at all possible because of like definitely I'm while they will be attending for that definitely like the mods that will be growing from within will that would be like control will at times like I'm during that mods are like preventing just allowing them from taking values like the scenarios that I'm doing. So that way like I'm going to like that way like for ending up like really staying still staying and living at like talking along with like yours and also with like scenarios that I'm going to bring. And I'm going to like as like things to be usually getting tougher and tougher for like the family and like as like its condition will be I'm definitely getting worse and worse like the scenario that I'm going to bring. And I'm going to like still and I'm setting the preparation that like usually it would be like 11 that would be saving with the like scenario that I'm doing. But like I'm right now also planning like maybe a flexible option to that. Like even before that, like I'm looking like uh definitely like the situation has like the situation of like will be getting worse and worse like and definitely like definitely maybe at some point like will the suffering maybe even while being controlled by like the monster maybe even attacking Bob is also like a possibility that I'm considering that like I'm considering eventually at some point I'm preferring like Bob most likely abandoning Joyce and Will and also and basically heading off to live at main by himself with like the scenario initial scenario that that will like an eventual I was like eventually Bob getting fed up with like the whole situation and everything, and I'm looking like that way like I'm looking like an eventual betrayal and of like an abandonment by Bob and like Bob like basically by himself like heading off to main to like live the like and Bob saving himself that way, saving himself and leaving that way like an angel scenario that I'm looking and abandoning like George and with like scenario that I'm looking and I'm looking like at that point I'm looking like George would be like Bob might have would be definitely might have been like an absolute comfort for like George. It's definitely especially right now like Bob person would be like such an absolute comfort for George, but like I'm looking like George getting that unexpected like abandonment and betrayal by Bob eventually at some point in the case of like the scenario that I'm hearing. And at that point, like Joy would be totally shattered and open and I'm like uh it would be during that point that I'm going to like pop-ups will be like showing up as like that absolute comfort for Joy, like the scenario that I'm doing. And that will like pop up will be spending more and more time at like build hope to like basically because like by then like I'm looking like Hopper will be seeing how much extremely shattered and weak Joyce would be of like a situation Joyce would be that like I'm looking like Hopper will be like spending more and more time at like with home to like give all of them that courage and confidence and determination to like fulfill this like kind of just scenario that I'm looking at, which like I'm still my reason leading to like eventually towards the very end ending up with like Hopper being part uh of like Wings family like kind of in the scenario that I'm living. So like the Nintendo brain so right now as for like Will right now recognizing joy but like Will not recognizing both like I'm definitely might be to be like I'm just saying like since like Will recently had access to like the now memories and everything like I'm just like first of all, my three assumptions were like what might have happened to Will might have been that right now Will like the current memory of Will would be that of like the past life of Will. Definitely remember premise. So like I'm going to find that the parallel world, like I'm going to specifically remember premise that like in like the parallel world there might have been like parallel versions of like everyone in like the real world in like the parallel world, and that might have been like the past lives of like everyone in like the real world. That might have happened in like the parallel world, and in like the past, so like the memories of like the past life of Will might be what like is in like Will's current memory right now, which might have gotten triggered and gotten switched up with like the present like real world memories of Will bring like due to like that flamethrower like I'm saying like might have gotten switched up since like Will during that has access to like the now memories which connects like the past events and like the future past memories and the future memories like or taking place simultaneously in like the now memories. So like I'm just like will have access to like the now memories like I'm saying like that flamethrower might have resulted in like the shifting up of like with like active current memories with like with past memory from back when from with past life in like the while new the will new that's like the parallel version of will in like the parallel words might be like the case certainly not the so like I'm like the fact that like will back when Will was like Will had gone missing and back when like Will was hiding in like while Will was like hiding in like castle bios in like the parallel one like since like Will had was like holding on to that favorite doll of like Sarah of the daughter and also like it might be due to like like in like the parallel world like the parallel version of Will in like the past like the parallel version of Will might have been actually like Hopper and George's son. It's definitely not the dream. So like what might have happened to like the Will from like the real world when he got lost uh when he disappeared and got lost in like the parallel world might have been like after like since like Will had spent so much time running away and escaping from like the monster and trapped in like the parallel world and like over time what might have happened would be like the actual real world will like after spending all that time in like the parallel world might have had his like eventually might have had his like parallel version memories like totally affecting him because like he was since like Will might have been living in like that parallel world might have been which might have been like the past world where like lived had lived in like the past before Will being reborn in like the real world might have been what might have happened. So like by spending so much time trapped in like the parallel world, like I'm like with past memories of like his past life in like the parallel world like myself like taken over like the actual memories and that might be the reason for like Will totally holding back while Will was hiding in the castle fire like Will holding on to like the favorite doll of like Sarah as definitely my brother so like they are in like the past life of Will like I'm like in like the past life of Hopper like I'm in the past life of Joyce like I'm like Hopper and Joyce might have gotten married and like Hopper might have been doing the suspicion of learning as well as like Bob might as well might have not all been in like a search or in like the past life of all of them. So like I'm doing in the past life like I'm doing it might have been exactly like how in like the real world Hopper might it might have been definitely Hopper and not the like wife that might have bought Sarah that favorite soul of Sarah. So like I'm saying that very same thing might have happened in like Hopper like past life where like the because might have been instead of uh Sarah like I'm like since in like the past parallel world like like the past life of like Hopper and Joyce like they might have gotten married so like and might have had kids so like I'm just like so like so that way like I'm like instead of Sarah like Bill might have been born as like the son of Hopper remember so like I'm yet like Hopper might have given like the very same favorite doll of Sarah to like his son Will in like Hopper and Will and Joseph like in like the Palmer of the remember the well, like it might have been due to like Will being affected by these memories and eventually these past memories of Will like taking over of like Will's past like taking over like the actual Will might be the reason for like Will only at that point like basically like once like Will might have found that like doll like on the ground like somewhere like Will might have recognized it that's like his favorite doll and will like holding on to that favorite shot while hiding in the gap in bias back then might have been what might have happened to Liver and Trade. So like I'm thinking like, after that like once like the monster had uh captured Will uh and once like Hopper and Jones had found Will in like the paddle world and saved Will and brought Will back to like the real world. At that point like I'm referring the effects of like the paddle world might have came undone from Will. Where like the effect of like the paddle world connecting to like the memory change of Will of like the past life of Will might have came undone. So like in that way like once like Will that might be the reason for like once like Will woke up after like Hopper and Joyce had saved Will like once like Will has basically woken up in like the real world like I'm remembering like she was like Will at that point being present in like the being brought to like the real world after doing that effects of like the past life and like past world connected to the memories of Will might have came undone. So like that way like once Will woke up in like the real world at that point like Will might that might be the reason for like Will being able to like recognize Joyce as the mother and basically and everything is definitely by the parents. So like I'm remembering right now recently due to like the whole Biden had access to like the now memory like was since like it was during then that basically the now memory which would be only having like which has been revealed to have like memories of like the past and like the future and everything like so definitely due to like the flamethrower like totally might have of like mixing up of like the memories of like all the past and like the future memories within like the now memories and might have resulted in like right now basically as like Will woke up like basically is right now like basically Will waking up with like Will being able to like recognize George but like Will not being able to like recognize Bob is definitely my three episodes. So like right now in like the present like in like the current memories that Will will be having will be that of like Will's past life with the minimum level, about which will not be won't be like even aware of the minimum frame. So like Will would be actually believing right now that like I'm preparing like the scenario to be like Will right now actually believing that basically Will's father is like Sopa is definitely my emperor. So like that's like the scenario that I'm preparing. So like I'm preparing like in like the past life of Will, like I'm looking like maybe in like the gang of like Michael Lucas and something like in like the past life, like I'm looking like maybe one among them might have been replaced with like with like Sarah, especially my maybe like a remote possibility that I'm looking maybe Sarah might be one among like the friends of like Will back in like the past like especially remember the reality. So like that way like I'm remembering like right now the different like Will to like Indo Will right now people recognize both like I'm saying like Will have to right now definitely recognizing Mike as well. As like most likely it's not only Mike but most likely Jonathan as well. His like brother and Mike as of like friend as well. Definitely one question. But like among like Lucas Dustin Lucas and Dustin like I'm looking like most likely will not recognizing one among them. It's like the scenario that I'm doing. And Bill at that point asking Mike as for like where Sarah is like in the scenario that I'm doing. So like these might be like the minor changes between like the uh, real world present life of Will and like the past life of like Will in like the bad world. It's also like a possibility that I'm looking for right now in the career. Okay, so like the clinical premises right now was like Lucas to help us in like Lucas right now showing up to like Michael home. First of all, my premises things that like really Lucas might have not even bothered to like first go up to like Mike as well as like Will's home to like get their help first and to check or see if they are at home. It's definitely my premises. Definitely or Dustin might have told Lucas might have been that like really Dustin might has tried like the radio phone at like Mike and Will's home and like basically they didn't pick up would be might be along the night like first they might have thought and look might but like I'm looking that might have been like back when like Russell earlier might have tried contacting like Mike and Will might have been the case definitely will bring so like especially I'm looking right now Lucas showing up to like Max's home like that may be something that Lucas might have done without even bothering to like check go up to like Mike's as well as like Will's home to like see if they are there or not and to get their help first. It's definitely my birthday. Even before that, like Lucas right now might have straight away on hearing it after nearing help like Lucas might have straight away head over to uh might have straight away head over to like Maxine home to like get Maxine help first. definitely my brother, that would be perfectly and solely due to like definitely and the Lucas definitely would be deep down having like a massive crush on like Maxi. This definitely my brother. So this would be the perfect reason for like Lucas being so extremely desperate, even more than anybody else, like even more than Dustin as well. Like Lucas being so desperate to like not lose Maxine and like that when Lucas even revealing that Lucas alone being like the one to like basically even reveal the truth about like the battle word and about the more stuff to Maxine or just like Lucas being so desperate about like wanting Maxine to like not leave like friendship. Yeah, would be definitely I'm just putting would be to like Lucas definitely don't have a massive trust on Maxine. It's definitely not great with him and I'm definitely putting like Lucas and Maxine definitely I'm just like want to be usually ending up in like some relationship or anything. It's like and it's a scenario that I'm definitely putting like definitely while I'm just putting like with having like a massive crush on like Maxine that computer still for Maxine quite a few Maxine will be obviously look up that's just kind of you know Maxine deep down in having like a crush. But still certainly not the current color so definitely right now with like Lucas so quickly showing up to like Maxine's home. Like definitely I'm doing right now with like Maxine's brother as well being there. Like I'm doing definitely Lucas right now I'm would be getting not only getting bullied but like I'm also like Lucas also being pushed down. It's like some scenario that I'm in. So like I'm doing like due to like the whole upbringing like I'm doing like Lucas even after seeing like not the I mean like Maxine's brother like I'm doing Lucas will be like the phrase to like maybe to get to sell like to have Maxines to be with like Lucas to like just for like a monster island. So like I'm like Lucas being persistent and that Ambassador like would be even angry like Maxine's brother even more that Ambassador like at that point like Maxine's brother like recently either pushing Lucas down or like Ambassador Maxine's brother like attacking Lucas and causing like tiny bit of like an injury to like Lucas like scenario that I'm like. And I was like Maxine totally seeing this like by the time Maxine would be showing up like I mentioned like what Maxine would be seeing would be like Maxine sort of like attacking Lucas, like the scenario that I'm doing. And I'm able to like Maxine's brother even scaring Maxine as well and that way forcing her to like stay at home like the scenario that I'm doing. So that is like the scenario that I'm doing and that like I'm putting like it will be only after that like I'm putting like Lucas will be even bothering to like even go up to like Mike as well as the format check if they are or no. It's definitely like the scenario that I'm talking about for together. So definitely still I'm putting like Max King definitely will be that able to sense that basically if that Lucas uh has gone to the extent of like basically even after knowing how scary Max King's brother is like the fact that Lucas it's showed up to like Maxine hope to like get Maxine. Definitely there will be some sort of like an extreme urgency in the along the lines Maxine will definitely be feeling. So like I'm just like Maxine is totally like without the charade delay, I'm just like absolutely would be leaving like I'm sure Maxine totally speaking out of like the Maxine hope with like the scenario without like Maxine's brother finding out like the scenario that I was already. And definitely I'm just like that way like I'm just like Maxine eventually is ending up running into Lucas, which also like a popular that I was doing. Somehow I was thinking as maybe like after like Lucas would be like going up the show and looking for checking to find Mike at like Mike's home uh, and then at Will's home like was like and definitely after the like them all will be right now like even so like I'm looking definitely Lucas not finding neither Mike nor Will in both of those homes. So like as like after that like as Lucas would get direct like head back uh to where like Captain HT would be like while Lucas would be going heading over there like I'm looking like Lucas is totally running into like Maxine at that point. It's like that would be looking for Lucas at that point. Like the scenario that I'm looking. So like Maxine by then would have like sneaked out of her home and might have gone up to like Lucas's home and might have not found Lucas there because like Lucas then would be like something for like Mike and Bill at their home like the scenario that I'm doing. While Lucas would be running back like I was like Maxine only running into Lucas and then like them both like basically heading over to like the location where like where like Dustin and Steve would be in that course next to scenario that I'm doing. So like everyone while they would be searching for this monster and maybe like I was would be when like maybe Max's brother would be like even finding out that like Max has like picked out of like support and they really like his brother being so extremely enraged and so they only like maybe Max brother maybe ending up finding like Steve, Dutchess, and Lucas and Magic in that force. The second maybe Max's brother in an experienced manner will be flying around like the town of Hawkins and then from a distance like maybe like Max's brother like Steve, like all of them like Steve as well as like Dustin and Lucas and Maxi in front of like that for with like simulation scenario that I'm doing. And at that point I'm just delivering like Maxi brother like once again speaking of like Lucas in like the scenario and bullying Lucas and like Dustin will be trying to like stop Maxi's brother at that point Maxi's brother like probably maybe attacking and injuring Dustin. So like at that point definitely Steve won't be able to like basically definitely that genuine good and empathetic kind of Steve at that point definitely would be happening at that point, but like Steve won't be able to like stand back as like Manchester United would be attacking like different something like it's like the scenario that I'm doing definitely definitely because of different something so young and everything. So like definitely probably like Steve at that point trying to like stop Max's brother. But like I'm thinking at that point Max's brother even bullying Steve as well as like in the scenario that I'm doing. And our friends then about like Max's brother like when attacking Steve and like then like totally a fight between like Steve and Max's brother happening. But like I'm doing Max's brother who is totally warring and defeating Steve and badly injuring Steve. It's like the scenario that I'm doing. And like then Max's brother and the friend like will be mocking and making fun of all of them and Steve and like Lucas and something and all of them and like would be forcefully taking Maxine away and would be giving like threatening them and giving them that final warning to like never like approach Maxine or even show up to like their home and all that and literally since like this brother forcefully taking Maxine away at that point like in the scenario that way like I'm definitely like it like definitely them fix in her in their mind like at least Steve as well as like I'm definitely that whole incident like bring all of them closer like Steve Lucas as well as like Steve closer to like the group of like Lucas and Tusket is like the scenario that I'm looking and then probably at that point like actually fixing in their minds to like basically definitely eventually to get their ultimate revenge or like Magnetic or it's like in the scenario that I'm looking for and number three. And also definitely at that point, definitely Lucas as well as Dustin at that point will be totally even seeing like Steve as like an absolute hero, even though like Michael's Dust's brother and the different totally or foreign and would be defeating and battling them Steve like I was like still like the fact that like Steve stood up for them and tried to like protect like Lucas and Dustin and I'm trying to only like giving that hero image um uh, uh from like Dustin as well as like Nathan's point of view, like they would be like totally see Steve as like this absolute hero for like standing up for them with like in the scenario that I'm able to only protect and my own membership. Okay, so like the clinical trace myself as for like when while remembering like choice as well as Mike like when you know remembering like Hopper as well as Bob like I'm because like it might my consideration that activity of like the situation would be actually still like the memory switching of Will from like the past life of Will as like the parent version of Will in like the parent body and like the present like present day Will like in like the real world. It's definitely my best memory. So definitely it might not have while Owen and all of them think that like memory loss that's like happening to will like I'm mean actually definitely won't be like memory loss, but it will be just like memory shifting between like his past life and like his personal life. It's definitely not famous. So definitely able to bring in like the past life of Will, while Will might have the lived as like the parent version of himself to like the parent world, like I'm like Will's part of still might have been like known as the livable friendship. While in that past life of Will, like another like Hopper might have Hopper as well as Bob might have Will might have knew whom Hopper as well as Bob was. It's the livable friendship. So this might be the source about like Will right now in like the present like, while like that memory might have been shifted and basically with like Will most likely will be right now having like that past life memory and this will be the present solution for like Will right now not recognizing like specifically involved as well as like how the level trends and then like the train unfortunately like and as for like in 11 games like I'm looking certainly the fact that when while 11 had basically entered into like the dark void part of like Piranha's experiment. At that point, like the fact that like one of like the famous monsters like basically approach 11 to and try to like communicate to 11 from like dark world instead of trying to like attack 11. But this is simply because of like that monster might what like that monster itself might be like the past life of like 11, like the parallel version of 11, which might have been like the past life of 11 that 11 lived in like the parallel world. Back then, like I was like it might be like everyone might have eventually ended up turning into like a basic monster, especially what might have happened, especially in the friends. So like that might have been due to like the result of like maybe like the monster itself, like basically like maybe like everyone might have in the like past like maybe like everyone might have gone through like a similar situation as that of like what wind is going right now and basically I'm something like the maybe like the wire spreading fast of that like also right now talking about might be like might be might be true. So like I'm such a scenario might have happened with like the past during like the past life of 11, which might have resulted in like 11 fully turning into like the face model, especially number two. So like that past life of 11, like the bad version of 11, that way might have been converted into like a face of monster, and basically it might have been that face of monster that might have through like the dark void myself seen 11 as like 11 in like the real world like from as part of like Brenner's experiment had for like the first time entered into like the dark void like and like it might have been like 11's like past life like parallel version that 11 might have seen that in that like that I might have seen in that like monster. Definitely might have been monster in like the last word is definitely my version. Might be the surprise of people for like 11 after that even saying that like 11 calling herself like a monster that like she is like a monster really precisely because of like in her 11 like past like she might have actually been like the a faceless humanoid monster definitely might have been referred. So like my doctor emerges were like maybe in like the past life of it in like the parallel world like I'm looking like maybe like in like this like current gang of concept of like my Elizabeth and Doctor in like the real world I'm not like stated to my observation that like the like the person right now because without like today but like Joseph and Dustin would be usually finding out about like the situation and once they would be like showing up to like the open land seeing Will like at that point I'm basically pressing like even though right now Will has like recognized Mike like I'm but Will definitely not recognizing one among like Lucas or Pascal is like the scenario that I'm picturing and Will will be like at that point even asking them as for like who's that person is and where is Sarah? It's definitely member players. So like I'm feeling like definitely that while Will was like trapped in like the battle world by Electro Monster and basically while Will was like hiding in his backyard by the fact that Will was holding on to like the favorite doll of like Sarah. But like, that might have been due to like maybe that in like Will's like past like in like the battle world like in like uh that Sarah and Will might have been like absolute great friends. So like I was like maybe even in like the Will's like past like I was like the battle world as well like I was like um, like it might be in remembrance of like Sarah that day while Will was like trapped and scared in like the parallel world and like while Will's memory after spending so much time in like the parallel world might have shifted from like the real world Will's memory to like the past like Will's that memory in like the parallel world. At that point like I'm looking like Will might have seen this like favorite doll of Sarah like lying on the ground and that way like they might have remembered Sarah, which might have been like a big like a great best friend in like this stuff like the next parallel world if you remember playing. Which might be the reason for like Bill holding on tight to like that favorite doll of Sarah. Like Bill was like hiding in like Captain Bear, all tired and exhausted and yeah, it's definitely my opinion. So the minimum representation were like basically in like Will as well as like Sarah like past like the family goal like everything like even though they might have these great friends like I'm looking like Will still might have not Will and Sarah might have not even like stay as like great friends for long because like I'm looking like before that like the whole uh in that part even before that like I'm looking like the whole monster takeoff in like the Star Wars and everything might have happened and that way like will as well as like Java in the concept that way might have like to like some of the even Sarah's test might have been due to like the moisture in the in Sarah's like past like the battle was it's definitely one of the things. So like especially because of maybe all the reason like I'm like Will as well as Sarah, even though they might have been only friends for like in their past life might have been only friends for like a short time. Still, even during that short time, like they might have been such as good great friends. Yet, like so and maybe because of all this reason as well, like Will and which like past like will try to not knowing who Sarah's father is, and that way like maybe like even in like Sarah's past life, like it might have been Hopper himself that might have been like the father Sarah in Bopper's past like so yet like I'm simply because of this reason like Will might have not known whom Hopper was even in like the past like before Will might have died especially in like the battle version of Will in like the in Will's like past like the battle was might have died due to it and also might have been what might have happened and this might be the reason for like right now like the person that Will right now the betterment bill right now, not only not being able to like recognize Bob, but also not being able to like recognize Hopper as well. It's actually not the same person right now. Okay, so like the impression right now is that like even though the fact that like he as well as Dustin are currently in love with a girl are like it's like bringing them closer, like and this is definitely still I'm also like eventually one like he would be like shocking having that absolute massive heartbreak and like shocking finding out once like I'm like eventually Nancy would get feeling that guilt and regret and start to like Steve of like cheating with like cheating on Steve with like Jonathan like they at that point I'm also definitely that by then like I'm also like Lucas I'm also like Lucas who was like currently putting in all the effort which would be definitely to like basically to have Maxine Ford for Lucas like I'm also like Lucas actually would be also simultaneously around that time while he would be having this heartbreak like I'm like Lucas as well would be having this like heartbreak once like Lucas would be finding out that like basically Maxine totally love the like the scenario that about the Northern Right. So like at that point I was like definitely it would be like Steve and Lucas that would be like spending more time together and would be like kind of like in like the same boat and everything. And I was definitely while like Lucas would be like and I was Lucas definitely won't be able to like kind of exactly like his situation. I was Lucas situation as well. I'm suddenly against the scenario where like once like Lucas will be finding out about like Maxine actually uh 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 having affectionate feelings towards like Dustin like basically at that point Lucas could they won't be able to like handle and I was just like Lucas definitely we feeling as if like we had put in all that effort and basically to have like Maxine fall for him, but like definitely like the blacks Maxine only falling for something like in the scenario that I'm doing. So like at that point like Lucas would be extremely getting jealous of like something and then like Lucas like totally like uh, creating a fight with like Dustin and all that like in the scenario kind of so like that resulting in like the next temporary fight and bit between like the gang where like I'm like Lucas would be like totally picking a fight with like Dustin and I'm like Lucas would be like staying away from like the gang for a while like the scenario exactly while Steve would be totally staying away from like Nancy it's like even Nancy Jordan's like the scenario that I was and during that time, like I was like definitely Steve and Lucas will be having a knock in that form and will be able to like relate to like each other's like situation as like individuals. To a certain extent, like individual scenario that I'm doing. That bringing like Steve and Lucas closer. Like an individual scenario that I'm doing. And definitely I'm doing Steve eventually maturing up and I'm going to like through and Steve that way totally forgiving Nancy and I'm like Steve deciding to like be that good friend for like Nancy and to not get in the way of like Nancy and Jonathan's like love and all that is like the scenario that I'm doing. And I'm specific at that point like this is like to be Steve's like maturity in which like Steve would be like advising like look up on how to like handle the situation exactly like Steve's situation and all that which would be resulting in like Lucas as well being able to like act mature in like a mature manner and basically that way, like Lucas Santos Barrett, and that through Steve's help is how Santos Barrett and Lucas as well eventually would be like ending this like fight with like something and basically we are coming back to like the gang and so he's saying sorry to like both Captain as well as Black Team and like the gang take back to like the actual self-flex scenario that I'm going to learn with the next and my tutorial version.